Welcome friends, I'm Sarah with Cleopatra's Crochet. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you everything I did to crochet this watermelon blanket, things I wish I had done differently, and everything you need to know to crochet your own. This is a beginner-friendly project, and once you get started, I'll show you a trick so you don't even have to count stitches. For this project, we're going to need 5 different colors of yarn. I used about 5 large skeins of pink, a partial of white, and then 2 different tones of green, and then a little bit of black, not a whole lot, for the seeds. For specifically the pink color, you need to pay attention to the dye lot since you're getting more than 1 skein of yarn. Anytime you get more than 1 skein of yarn for a project, turn the label over and look at what is called the dye lot number. The lot number specifically means that all of the yarn was dyed in one batch. And that's really important because if you get yarn that's technically the same color, but it's been dyed at 2 different points in the manufacturing process, then there could be a slight variation in your color. And that actually happened to me on this project. I'm going to insert a photo here so you can see that there's actually, I bought about, I think 3 skeins of pink and it wasn't enough. So I went to go buy more and my store didn't have any more. So then I had to go buy it online and it wasn't the same dye lot. For this project, we're also going to need at least 6 stitch markers, a tapestry needle, some sort of scissors, and a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. I'm going to get started with 6 half double crochets in a magic ring. You can also use single crochets or double crochets. I'm personally the fastest at the half double crochet stitch, so that's what I chose for this project. As I get started making this project, I'm going to go ahead and explain what I'm doing and how the pattern works out so that you don't really have to count your stitches. If you want to skip all the math and the numbers of how and why things work and you just want to know what to do, then I'll give you a timestamp down in the description for you to jump to. I personally work better when I understand why and how things work, and I actually enjoy math, so I'm going to explain that all to you now. The most common number for starting a magic ring in crochet is to use 6 stitches. The next round, usually you do 6 increase stitches, whether that's a single crochet, half double, or double. So when you go from 6 stitches to 12, you're doubling your stitches or you're increasing by 6 stitches. Round 3 is usually make a stitch and then make an increase stitch. Repeat it 6 times. You end with 18 stitches. So again, when you go from 12 stitches in your round to 18 stitches, you're increasing by 6. And if we look at row 4, 5, 6, again, you're increasing each round by 6 stitches. On the other hand, if you end up adding more than 6 stitches in your round, then your blanket is going to start to create like a ripple effect where it's not going to lie flat. And the best way I can compare this is if you're in a plane and you're flying and your degrees heading is off. You're going a long distance, and if you're off by 5 degrees, well, you may end up in a completely different city or country than you intended. Conversely, if you're not adding 6 stitches each round and you're adding 4 or 3, then your blanket is going to start to become a sphere or a basket, or it won't have enough stitches to lie flat. So instead of counting all of the stitches in the round, it's a lot easier to count 6 each round than it is to count 300. So I personally just count the increases, and that's where your stitch markers are going to come in. I put a stitch marker whenever I put an increase. And then I can pay attention as the blanket gets larger and larger to, do I still have 6 stitch markers in the round? Are my 6 stitch markers evenly spaced around the circle? If all of my increases are happening clumped together, then I'm going to have an object at the end that is not a circle. The next key component that I want you to understand about circles and crochet is that if you make all of your increases at the exact same point, then your circle is going to start to turn into a hexagon, and you're going to get flat sides and a point for each of the 6 increases that you're making. I personally don't like that look. I want more of a true circle at the end of my blanket. So let's look back at the original pattern for just a basic circle, and let's fix that problem. What if every other round we shifted the pattern by half? An easy way to do that is if we look at all of the even rounds. So let's look at 6 and 8 in particular. There's 4 half double crochets and then an increase, repeated 6 times. If we shifted it by half, you just need to divide by 2. So 2 half double crochets and then an increase. Well, we need the same number of stitches. So what if I did 2 half double crochets, an increase, and then 2 half double crochets? It's the same exact number of 36 stitches at the end of the round, but we've shifted it so that your increase isn't happening at the same place that your increase from round 5 happened at. Now we need to shift row 7 back to the original pattern, because if you were to do 2 half double crochets and then an increase and then 3 half double crochets, so the 2 and the 3 make 5, your increase is now happening at the same point as your new round 6. But we don't want the increases to all happen at the same point. So we need to go back to the original 5 half double crochets and then an increase. Row 8 will be the shift row. So all of your even rows, row 6, row 8, row 10, row 12, you're taking the number of stitches at the beginning. For row 6, that's 4 stitches. For row 8, that's 6 stitches. And you're going to divide it by 2. So your 4 stitches becomes 2, and then an increase, and then 2. You repeat that, it's the same 36 stitches in the total round. The increase is just being placed at a different point. For row 8, that means 3 half double crochets, then your increase, then 3 half double crochets. For row 10, you would have 8 stitches divided in 2, means make 4 half double crochets, an increase, and then 4 half double crochets. Okay, so that's enough math. Let's return to our project, and we're going to start by putting in stitch markers at each of the 6 increases around whatever round we've just completed. If you don't care about ending up with a hexagon at the end of your work, you could just leave these stitch markers in and make an increase every time you come to the stitch marker. And then you don't have to count. You don't have to move the stitch markers. You just, when you get to a stitch marker, make an increase. I personally don't like the look of a hexagon, and I want more of a true circle. Okay, so I will make an increase in between each stitch marker. So I will make an increase here, 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 right here, right here, and right here. And then each time you're going to move your stitch marker to where you've made the increase. And then as you go around, essentially you're just shifting halfway and making sure that the increases aren't happening at the same point. So let me go ahead and show you the first couple of stitches. So I'm going to make my way. I'm halfway in between these 2 stitch markers, so I'm going to make an increase here. And I'm going to take this stitch marker and I'm going to move it to where I just made that increase. And now once again, my next increase comes here. So I've just gone into that stitch marker. I'm going to make an increase here. So I'm going to leave that stitch marker there so I can still see and gauge that I've made it halfway. And then, oh, I'm about halfway. So I'm going to move this red one. Oops. To the increase that I just made and keep going. So each time again, I'm going to make an increase here and move the stitch marker there, make an increase here, move that stitch marker here, and just keep working my array around so that I don't have to count stitches. Now I'm going to show you how to make the watermelon seeds, and I made mine using black yarn, but since it's really hard to see and show on camera, black yarn and stitches, I'm going to make them right now using green yarn so you can see better what's going on. We begin with 6 single crochet in a magic ring, and that's 6. And to tighten down, I'm going to stick my crochet hook again in that first stitch so that it doesn't get lost when I tighten. Round 2 is 6 increases for a total of 12 stitches at the end. This is the second increase. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And then round 3 is an incomplete round, just to give you more of a teardrop shape. So I'm going to do a half double crochet and then a half double crochet increase. So half double crochet and then 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. So that's 1 and that's 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and just trim this yarn, pull through, and then weave in these 2 tails. And you've got your teardrop shape for the seeds. So then make as many as you want. You can evenly space them, you can make them in a pattern, or you can just space them randomly. The more you make, the more you have to sew on, so it's a balance. Here I have a sample of the watermelon blanket, and I just want to show you the transition of the 2 different grains. So once you've used up pretty much all of your pink, say 5 skeins or so, and made it as large as you've wanted, and then you've added a couple rows of white, you're going to go ahead and start working in one of the green colors. And then so that you don't have to cut your yarn, make a knot, and then weave in ends repeatedly, this is what I do instead. I'm going to go ahead and make the first part of a half double crochet stitch by pulling up my loop. And then instead of wrapping the yarn around my hook and pulling through all 3 loops, I'm instead going to use the second green color to do that. So I haven't made a slip knot or anything, I'm just going to start working and I'll make that knot and weave it in later. So that's my color transition. And then I am going to work over top of the green yarn that I'm not using. So I'm going to wrap the yarn around my hook, go in to make my stitch. See, I'm holding the green yarn I'm not using off to the left, and I'm going to make my stitch. Then I'm going to make it the next stitch, just again working over top of whatever color I'm not using, and it's gonna hide it. You'll be able to see it a little bit, but it's not gonna be prominent when you're looking at it from a distance of an entire throw blanket. And then when I need to transition again to a different color, I'll bring up a loop as if I'm making a stitch, put down my green yarns and switch them. So I'm going to bring the dark green over to my right and the light green over to my left and just start working with the other green color. And again, working over top of whatever green color I'm not currently using. And for the greens, I didn't do any sort of pattern. I kind of wanted it to look organic. So I would make a section of dark green, a section of light green, a section of dark green, and they wouldn't necessarily be even in the number of stitches. You could do, say, I don't know, 20 stitches in dark green, 20 stitches in light green. But when I got to the second round and the third round of green, I made sure that my transitions didn't all happen at the same point. I overlapped, so I would do dark green from about here to about here. And that just gave it more of a organic transition between the two colors. And that's how I make the green for the watermelon blanket.